Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about what seems to be the season 1 finale of Sweetpea. Great finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down really quickly. I'll talk about this more at the end, but the reason why I'm like, oh, is this the season finale, series finale? I was seeing this as a mini-series. It's labeled as one on IMDb, so I thought maybe this might be a one and done, but like I said, I'll talk about that more. It seems like with the way this ends, plays out like a season finale, but you know, like I said, those conversations, I'll save them to the very, very end of this recording. But first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode, where we have Rhiannon and Julia being brought in to question, and obviously they're keeping to their story about everything that's going on, but Marina is dead set on, you know, Rhiannon being the killer, which, as we as the audience know, she's right, but it ends up being that complicated thing going forward of, when it comes to a story like this, like, do you root for the person who is like your main protagonist, but they do evil stuff? Do you still root for them? Like me, I've talked about it countless times. Like, you take someone like a Light Yagami. I wouldn't like Yagami to get away with it in Death Note. Walter White in Breaking Bad, despite all he done, I kind of want Walt to get away with it. It's that type of situation where I'm like, despite all that she's done, I understand why she did it. Do I say she's justified? No, but I understand where she's coming from. Like, she just, like, Marina is the protagonist in this regard. Once again, it's always that interesting perspective thing of, because Marina is in the right, but we are following our protagonist who is in the wrong. So it ends up being that really interesting thing of like, yeah, she is a killer, so she deserves to go to jail. But it is a thing of, but I still understand where she's coming from in her blinded vigilantism in its own way. Because the argument could be like, well, how much of that is really just you being a vigilante versus, oh, I vented and I'm a very angry person. Once again, understandably with your life, like, why you'd be angry, but then like you just took it out on some people that just happen to be assholes. You know, you found out the first guy was an asshole well after the fact. You know, but that still doesn't justify him getting murked. You know, same thing for the second dude. Yeah, I'm sure everything with Julia's fiance is, yeah, I'm sure that's debatable when you're bringing it to an abusive significant other, just an abusive person in general, but especially in an abusive relationship situation like that. But either way, despite Marina poking and prodding, Julia sticks to her story, especially when Marina really leans into Rhiannon, trying to say, like, right, all these aspects about you, no one saw you, like, the fact is your dad died recently, and you were angry, you are alone in this world, because it's like, right, your dad's gone, your sister doesn't live with you, you're angry, she gets it. Which I even love the opening, before we even got to the opening credit, the cold opening, where they both sit down and are just like, people I want to kill, this bitch. And he said it, they were thinking it about each other, which I think is so interesting. But yeah, like, Marina's pointing out, like, right, like, how angry she is, and it's like, oh, you're also with the woman who stressed you out and bullied you so much that you were pulling your hair out. It's like, right, people didn't see you. I get that, but the difference is I didn't go out of my way. I might have fantasized about the way people might die in horrible ways, but I never actually went about actualizing that, unlike you, who are a murderer. So obviously Marina did not do herself any favors using that, like, because obviously there are parallels, if they've set up since like episode 3, there are parallels between Marina and Rhiannon. And like I said, if the circumstances were different, I think they could be friends. But either way, it's a situation of her saying that in front of her boss, and then her boss is like, whoa, you're way out of line. She even got pissed at her partner and called him out, which is kind of sad because he was just trying to be supportive. He's like, basically, every dog has its day. So he's trying to tell Marina, like, take a step back. Like, even if we let her go, let's just keep an eye on her. But, like, she wasn't going to hear that because Marina is tired of always being overlooked, especially because she already broached all of this to her boss before, but her boss was so hand-wavy about a lot of stuff. Her boss is very hand-wavy towards her in general, and didn't just, like, stick the knife even deeper because it's like, right, Rhiannon's getting away and she's getting released, is also the fact is your boss is like, I don't overlook you, it's just that you're not good enough. And you're just like, Jesus, that was just like the last, like, little twist of the knife. So Julia and Rhiannon get released, and Rhiannon meets up with Craig, who was waiting for her, understandably. So that's like, oh, that's nice. But then like shows up at Julia's house. Like obviously it's become like a big publicity thing. So people are there, including AJ, and but like right, they're trying to square everything away between them, and it seems like they're in a good spot. And obviously Rhiannon likes AJ, and he obviously likes her. So, but yeah, goes to her home, and lo and behold, Julia shows up not too long after because she didn't really have anywhere else to go. And at first I was kind of thinking, oh, this is an interesting development. It's like, oh, you guys are kind of becoming friends because it's like, right, she is free for the first time. They both are, which I think is such an interesting thing. Julia talked about that, like that freedom from a very like personal level of like, I'm free. And every once in a while she would mention like, we are free, referencing her and Rhiannon. But more often than not, when Rhiannon's talking about the freedom, it wasn't just Julia's freedom, it was her own freedom too that she was talking about. So Rhiannon kind of made it about both of them, where more often than not, Julia kind of made it just about herself. Not an indictment against Julia, it's more like an indictment against Rhiannon, kind of like, we are all in this together, but the whole point was like, right, killing her fiance was more so about freeing her because he was an abusive piece of shit. So that's where you kind of end up in that interesting, like, just view from the beginning of, you could tell, like, because Rhiannon doesn't have a lot of people in her corner, and she felt like this thing connected her and Julia, and it's like, right, my biggest bully, we're now kind of accomplices in a lot of ways, and so, like, this is the one person who knows the truth, the entire truth about me, and it's like, there's kind of like, trauma and tragic bonding. It's like this tragic thing is what kind of brought us together. So it's kind of all Gucci, but it's still the thing of, yes, you did in fact kidnap her and held her hostage for multiple days and were threatening to murder her. So there's kind of, because I think by the time we get to the end of or like a good chunk of the way through this episode, we find out like all of this has happened pretty quickly. Like all of this is, relatively speaking, probably like a little bit over a week this whole series has transpired, because she's only just getting her dad's ashes this episode, and like there's a text message from Julia being like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna stop by the house to check it out. Obviously that was like earlier in the season, so it's like, oh, that, so it's only been like maybe a little over a week since the beginning of the series, pretty much. So it's just interesting how like a lot can change perspective wise for Rhiannon, but once again, because of the circumstances, she thought she found kinship with Julia, because it's like, right, we're both free in a lot of ways. She's free of her abusive ex, I'm free of the crimes I committed, I'll never kill anyone again. But Julia kept giving her the stink eye, kind of like, understandably, but like, yeah, I don't know how true that is, like, because she even jokes about it later on. It's like, oh, I could kill the guy if you want me to, and Julia's like, what? She's just, no, I'm just joking. It's like, well, we're not to that point. It was only like, a couple hours ago that you murdered her fiance, so it's kind of like you can't really, joke about murder. We're not at that point. So, but the two of them like do go out and celebrate. They're drinking, they're taking drugs. To be fair, Julia's like, it's like, I think there's a little bit of Julia that was connecting with her, because it's like, right, you are kind of my savior, you saved me, but it's kind of that thing of Rhiannon kind of crossed a boundary, even though it's like they're in such a weird, awkward situation, because it's like, right, you helped free me, but you are still a serial killer. So it's like coming to terms with that and like enjoying your freedom, but realizing what it costs, but also recognizing like, and there's something I kept thinking the entire time, I'm like, is she gonna have to kill Julia because she could be, and for all intents and purposes, she is a loose end. So I figured like maybe Rhiannon would have to maybe kill her by the end of the episode type of thing, because Julia might start second guessing her, which she started doing throughout the episode. But I think it's also like Julia's getting high just to kind of forget everything. So they're partying up, making out. Then, you get Craig in the mix, and they have this nice moment on her roof where it's like, she's able to dump her dad's ashes. And even Julia being like, oh yeah, I think your dad would find it funny that his ashes spilled out all in your bag. It is sad too, because Julia was like, wait, did you bring your dad's ashes to the club? She's like, yeah, I thought he'd be lonely. It's like, once again, her dad was like the only person that was ever in her corner, was her best friend. So for her, she just like, and even saying like, I think my dad would be proud of me. You see Julia kind of looking like, well, you murdered 3 people. I don't think your dad would be too keen about that, but let's not push that problem. So But yeah, like Julia's kind of deciding what she's going to do with her life. And, it's like, right, you're free. We can make our own choices. And then what happens is, once again, crossing that boundary a little bit, she's like, oh, we should move in together. You can stay in my sister's room. It's like, hey, yo, like, once again, you're getting a little too comfortable. You're partying it up, but like the reality of it all kind of sinks in. But it's like, Rhiannon's kind of awkward, and she's kind of reading too much into this situation because it's like, hey, we're besties now. But it's like, no. Once again, you're still the person that kidnapped her. And she didn't have that awakening or realization and perspective on things until Julia came into the Gazette to kind of tell her story, because she's looked at kind of like a celebrity, both Rhiannon and Julia, because it's like, right, Julia telling her harrowing story, whereas Rhiannon's seen it as this hero. And so, right, when she's recapping what she went through, she didn't have to make it up. She just took what she went through with Rhiannon and just applied it to her fiance. And you could tell how much it was eating away at Rhiannon, because it's like a lot of the stuff that could be attributed to her fiance and what he, quote unquote, put her through. It's like, well, I'm the one that put her through it. So, but it's like, no, we're good, right? It's like, no, you're not. You're still, once again, a serial killer, and you're her kidnapper. And I think she just let it slip her mind what this dynamic was. She let this kind of uniting moment of, I killed your fiance, to be very threatening to kill himself if you turn him away, but also like, we also backed each other up with telling this narrative, and now we're free, but I'm also latching onto your freedom and kind of making it my own freedom as well. So it spooked Julia to the point that she avoided being around Rhiannon. Because Rhiannon tries to invite her over. It's like, oh, I'll cook my meal and everything. I'm like, Julia's not coming over. I was wondering if, she, like I said, was she going to second guess things and tell the cops? It's like, yeah, but she'd probably be incriminated in some of that too, so... What did she do? She bails. Like, the moment, like, Rhiannon, I was like, well, she's avoiding you. Wasn't expecting her to leave town, which makes the most sense. But I love the reveal where it's like, wait, she's like, like, these tickets for, like, a flight or whatever were bought. And I was like, right, you never got your credit. Well, yeah, I was about to say, I doubt she memorized your entire, your credit card number. But it's like, well, she knows your PIN. So I was like, right. And even, Rhiannon's like, wait, did you ever give me my credit card back? It's like, no, she bailed, because it's like, I want a fresh start away from all this, because being around Rhiannon isn't good, because it's like, well, I can't take the chance that you might change your mind one day, because like Marina says, like, it's like, you will kill again because it's inside of you. That it just come like, she thinks like, oh, I'm gonna kill and I'm gonna be done. It's like, that came from somewhere in you, and it's just like, I mean, the first situation was a heat of the moment situation. Once again, doesn't make it okay, but I mean, once again, from a legal standpoint, it changes the charges if it, in that regard. Whereas everything else was premeditated. Granted, the third murder, it's like, well, you weren't planning on killing him. You were just planning to frame him for the prior two murders. So, but yeah, like the second one was premeditated. So that, obviously makes those charges pretty clear in that capacity. So. But yeah, like I said, it was just like, what I mean by that is, like, because the second murder was premeditated, and she was, for a long time, planning to kill Julia, making her victim number 3. So it becomes that thing of, that is still somewhere inside of you, that need and urge to kill. Like, that doesn't disappear. It wasn't just a heat of the moment situation like one was. There was meticulous, thought. You still didn't plan everything out, but there was enough thought in a lot of stuff. So you planned out quite a bit, so yeah, like I said, it's somewhere inside of you, and that's not just going to go away and disappear in your life. It's like, it's always going to, that darkness is always going to be there. It's just going to take the right, or rather unfortunate situation to spark that in you, like the end of this episode, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So my point is, Julia knows she'll never quite be safe around you because you're unhinged, and, to be fair, it all plays into, she's always been Rhiannon's obsession. Rhiannon's obsessed over her in the regards of, yes, you kind of shattered my world. My entire world turned upside down. My life became a living hell because of you. So you are always kind of like that monster to her. So it's like, now those feelings, that obsession has kind of flipped onto the more positive side. Like, but it's like, I don't think Rhiannon's kind of pieced that together, but Julia kind of did. So like I said, there could also just be the angle of, I don't know when I'm going to do something to upset her, or maybe like I know too much and Rhiannon might decide to off me one day. So a lot of that's probably playing into why Julia left. Plus, also just like I need to get away from all this. My name is always going to be connected with this stuff. I want to be as far away as possible, and I want to go live my life now that I'm fully free. So, a lot of that. On the flip side of things, you have the Marina of it all, where she is upset because she's seeing all these flyers about. Right, Marina was tearing up those flyers for Julia being missing because she was frustrated by everything, and it's just like, well, we don't know career-wise, like the situation with her boss, like that probably isn't going to be helping your career anytime soon. But more so than anything, a killer got away, and you're frustrated by it. So what does she decide to do? She decides to break into. Well, she was going there just to, I guess, confront Rhiannon. I don't know what she was planning on getting out of that, but Rhiannon wasn't home, so she broke in. It's like, well, last episode she was going to do that, but her partner stopped her. So, but yeah, she goes in there. I'm like, what is she going to find? I'm like, I don't think there's going to be anything here incriminating enough. Because it's like, well, even if she finds a tarp and stuff, but I'm sure, like, she already got rid of all that. I'm like, there's nothing she brought here that would be incriminating. And then we find, like, the CCTV footage from her dad's business, where it turns out the footage of her stabbing Julia's car. So Marina's super excited, and I love that by the time, like, the next morning or whatever, when Rhiannon came home, she found Marina there being like, whoa, where were you all night? I've been waiting. I'm like, what are you, her mother, waiting for her to get home? Like, what is that? It's like, you broke into her house waiting to confront her. It's like, you should have just left. But it's like, and she confronts her like, right, I know you did do this, but it's like, well, you don't have any, it's also, you can't use that evidence. And it's like, yeah, that is true. Once again, it is an apple from the poisonous tree. You got that evidence illegally, and that means, like, that evidence is completely inadmissible. So once again, I'm not familiar with, I'm assuming this kind of falls under UK law. Like, I don't know UK law, but I'm sure there are a lot of common ground rules across a lot of countries' laws, but I know that can vary from country to country. But either way, so, but even Rhiannon was kind of saying, like, you can't use that because you broke in here. But for Marina, it's like, it's enough proof of, like, because she's like, for a second, I started wondering whether or not I was crazy, but now I'm like, actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually I'm now, like, convinced, like, no, I know you did do this, and I was right to trust my instincts. But it's like, so I guess for her, it's like, this might not be admissible, but at the very least, I don't know, because if she presented it to her boss, it's nothing. I mean, who knows how much the CCTV footage caught? I mean, it would be enough, like, I'm sure her coming over and asking Julia to giving Julia a ride, it contradicts the story they were, like, concocting and everything. So it does make it so it's like, well, it was enough that Marina felt confident. We saw her stabbing Julia's car, but, like, at first I was like, well, the footage, probably can't zoom in enough to make out the knife. So that's not going to be used in that way. But once again, it contradicts whatever narrative or story they were creating, where it's like, oh, like, Julia was with you, why didn't you say anything, yada, yada, so on and so forth. Especially because Craig lied about making it so, like, only Julia was there and never admitting that Rhiannon was there. So that's always a thing of, it never happened in the episode, but Marina could have always gone back to question Craig and put him under the spotlight for that. But once again, this is all evidence she can't really use, because I think if you use that poisonous evidence, it poisons any other evidence you gathered as a byproduct of said evidence. So if she did question Craig, and anything he said afterwards would probably be inadmissible. And once again, she can't bring any of this to her bosses, no matter what it is. It kind of completely fucks the entire investigation. Plus, she knows they don't listen to her anyway. They'll probably say it's circumstantial. How'd you get it? Like, all the right questions that should be asked would Marina couldn't answer them honestly, and even if she did, it just, like I said, the entire investigation would be fucked. So there's that. So it ends up being this situation, as I kind of brought up earlier, where Marina was like, you will kill again, and I'll be there to bust you, because it's like you will have that instinct. Like, this life you're building for yourself isn't your real life. Like, this is you just playing pretend, and eventually kind of saying, like, everyone will eventually see you for who you really are and bail. So that ended up happening with Julia, ultimately ends up happening with AJ. Like I said, we'll get to that. But Rhiannon throws it back in Marina's face, where it's like, oh, this is kind of all you have too. It's like, as we've seen her and Rhiannon kind of lived kind of like a solitude life of not really having anything. So for Marina, like this life, like because at work she's constantly being overlooked anyway. This case was kind of like I think her opportunity to make people see her in a similar way with like Rhiannon did in a way. So, but yeah, like it struck a nerve with Marina. So I believe, yeah, if I remember correctly, that's the last time we see Marina in the episode. So we take the whole situation with Rhiannon, who goes to see Craig because she wants to break up with Craig because she wants to be with AJ, and Craig kind of flips the script on her a little bit because she's like, right, this was never real. It's like it is sad because I think Craig did start developing real feelings for her. Like once again, it was kind of a one and done, and she was like had feelings for him, but he didn't have feelings for her. But since she became, more confident, it changed his perspective on her, and I think he did legitimately start liking her. But he comes off a little tool baggish, but it's like, right, I lied for you, this and that, and he's like, there's something going on here. He's like, fine, you want me to keep quiet? You're gonna have to sell me your dad's business. And it's like, okay, like, how does it feel knowing that the business you own, the only way you could get it is through blackmail? So I was like, interesting. Because I was thinking for a second, I was like, is she going to have to kill Craig? Especially when his final line to her is, yeah, he wouldn't be proud of you, referencing her dad, even though she was like, oh, my dad would be proud of me. It's like, he sadly wouldn't be. He'd be proud of the fact that you're standing up to yourself. He just would not be proud of what it took to get you there. So... And Craig saying that, I was like, is she going to pop off and kill him? But it's like, right, she made such a point to Marina, I'm not going to kill anybody, so she just walks away. It's like you've been dealt with, you've kind of been, in a way, paid off. So the last thing she had of her dad, well, aside from the house, was this. So, but then like the whole waiting for Julia at her house, and then AJ comes over, and they eventually do their thing. And I thought was really interesting where he does the thing that she did when she was having sex with Craig, where she was like, look at me. I was like, oh, I thought that was interesting. It's kind of like let's meet eye to eye. And it's like, well, we know why Rhiannon does it. I thought it was interesting but I think for AJ, it's like we're in the moment. It's like, don't look away. Like, let's look into each other's eye. Like, it's such a beautiful, intimate moment. And let's stay locked in on each other. I guess that's how you could feel it. Whereas like Rhiannon wants you to, no, look at me. Like, see me, be into me, feel me, and want to like lust after me and be with me. Because, she's so used to being overlooked or seen through. So I was waiting for the other shoe to drop because I'm like, there's going to be something with AJ. And because I was like, there's too much time left on the clock for this episode. And lo and behold, he has a police contact. First police contact. And it turns out he remembered her knife. He only saw it the one time. But it was like, right, it's a very specific knife, and it's the one that I should have seen that coming, because I was like, what would pop up that would make... Because when he's like, oh, I want to share this with you, I was like, it's going to be something that's going to catch her attention. But the reason why is because like she used the phrase like, oh, that's a kit, oh, that's quite a kit or something like that. And that's exactly what AJ said to her when he saw the knife. So it probably triggered that even more so in his mind, where it's like, shit. He realized, like, right, this is a very specific knife. I saw it because you were opening packages with it and stuff. Like I said, how I should have also seen it coming is Marina brought up the knife towards Julia and Rhiannon at the beginning, even bringing up her dad, like what type of job he did and stuff like that. So it was always going to come literally full circle from beginning of the episode to the end. And AJ's like, right, like, tell me that's not your knife. Where is it? She's like, oh, it's probably in the kitchen or something. And it's just like, oh, boy. And AJ's like, right, you killed those men. And she's like, they were bullies. Like, the fact is, you know me, you see me. And then he says the word where it's like, you're a monster, It's like, part of me was wondering, like, because he's the one that kind of spun the story at the beginning, being like earlier in the season, being like, oh, maybe this person's kind of on some Robin Hood stuff. And she's kind of at first kind of being like, oh, yeah, like, that she really liked that he spun the narrative that way. He was also one that early on was kind of like, being like, dismissive of being like, oh, this person's a sociopath. He said something that Rhiannon was not a fan of. So, yeah, when it's all said and done, she has no choice because AJ wants to leave, and it's just like, you can't let him leave, so she proceeds to murder AJ. She stabs him like, 3 times? One in the side, one kind of in the neck/shoulder blade area, and then like one more time in the back, and you're just like, fuck. And he's dying in arms. She's like, I'm not a monster. I'm not. She's like, it's okay. And it's just like, Jesus. Like, right, just when you get the guy you want, this happens. And it's like, it was going to happen nevertheless. You know, it just happens to suck that it happens right after you guys finally get together. And what was his word before they like hooked up? It's like, she's like, oh yeah, I broke up with Craig. He's like, oh God, thank finally. You know, so you're like, damn. And something I love too is just the entire time I'm like, man, Saren kept contacting her, but I was like, are we really not going to see Saren in this episode? Like I said, I was kind of wondering, like, is this going to end on like a cliffhanger, or is it going to be, like I said, because I thought maybe it's a one and done. But yeah, how does it end? Well, Saren literally walking into the house as she's in the kitchen with his dead body. She's got blood on her too, so I'm like, how? Like, unless you get very lucky and Saren goes to a completely different part of the house, like, because like it's like a straight shot to where the kitchen is, but it's like, I don't know if like you'd have to like, I don't remember the layout of the house enough to know, like, could she have easily like go upstairs instead of see them? Like, they're like off to the side of the entrance of the kitchen, where it's like from the camera angle we can see Saren from her position, from where Rhiannon is with AJ's dead body. So something we also never got clarification for, like, and I guess it's just a throwaway thing. AJ getting a job at the Gazette, it's because like something about his mom. I'm like, well, he did keep bringing up his mom, which I'm like, I guess in the future we dive into that more, because I was like, well, his mom has to be someone significant enough for Norman to give him a job like immediately without really too much fuss. And he kind of references like, yo, my mom is going to be looking for me. So yeah, you did exactly what Morena said. So how do you handle that? Because there's two things to keep in mind. Who knows if his mom knows that he was going to go see Rhiannon? So that's kind of one. Two, she texted Julia that she was with AJ, so she can't be like, oh, I wasn't with AJ. Like, if word gets back and somehow Julia gets dragged into this, it could be a thing of, well, there's those text messages to her telling, like, yo, her and AJ smashed, so she doesn't want to be the last person seen with AJ, but she would have to be forward thinking right now, like, okay, if it ever comes out that I was with AJ, I need to be like, no, I was with AJ. I don't know where he went afterwards, but it's still going to make you look suspicious because you were the last known person with. So there's a lot there. So, but also a third one, as I kind of brought up before, I was just thinking about, who is AJ's mom? Is she someone significant? Like, is she going to be like some like mayor or something? Like, they never really went into anything about his mom, so I think that's going to be a big factor into it, because whoever she is, that could be something. Like, she could be someone in a powerful enough position to really push for AJ. And if AJ's going missing, that's going to give Morena enough time to really sniff around, especially considering she knows there is a connection between AJ and Rhiannon. So it's just going to be more fuel to the fire, especially when she made her declaration to Rhiannon. But it's all about how long Rhiannon would be able to keep it secret that AJ's gone. Like, how long would you be able to keep that covered up, and how, you know, so there's a lot, once again, especially because your sister's walking through the door. I also want that confrontation because there's so much I want to know about her, like what her issue with Rhiannon is, why she's kind of an asshole. So there's a lot. There's plenty more for season 2, and this is where we're going to kind of get into those conversations I was talking about earlier, where I was like, hey, I saw that at least on IMDb, this was listed as a miniseries, but hey, things go from miniseries to limited series to full series. That can change. That can happen. This is based on a novel. I don't know how much of the novel this is covered. Whether this is how the novel plays out. I feel like you probably have a more conclusive ending. I think some of the things I Googled was like, some of the changes I saw was like, I think, and do correct me if I'm wrong, I read this a couple hours ago, so I could be misremembering. I believe Rhiannon's backstory is a little different in the book, and certain characters' backstories are fleshed. So there's certain characters that were probably in the series that are just fleshed out more in the book than you get in the story. So that's why I'm like, are we covering, like, has this been like half the book, or is this the entire book and we just left it that open-endedness even in the book, or what? Stuff like that is what I'm curious about. But, like, you know, if they wanted to continue, they could. Because another factor I was bringing up about this, why I was so being like, oh, it's a one and done, is because as I talked about, I think I talked about in episode 1, it's like, well, Ella Purnell is one of the leads in the Fallout show, which is coming back for a second season. I don't know where it is production-wise, whether they're still in the pre-production phase. Like, I don't know if, like, the entire season's being written. I believe at the time of me recording this, it's the 19th of November. I don't believe anything's been filmed yet. I don't think they've actually properly started proper production on it, but like I said, I could be mistaken. So that's a big series, but I don't know if that's going to have like well, most shows now have this whole 2 years in between seasons thing. That's not a new thing, but like just because like the Westworld parallel, because like Westworld would do that. There were 2 years in between every season. So, but like a lot of streaming shows have kind of gotten to that point production wise and stuff. So that's why I'm like, I wouldn't even just be like a Westworld comparison. Just like a lot of shows are in that boat. But yeah. So that's why I was like, this is a small enough production. Like, this would be something she can film in between seasons, you know? So that's why I was like, yeah, if there was a season 2. Because someone can correct me. I believe this was, like, when this was originally released, like, on October 10th, it came out all at once in the UK. Here in the States, it's been week to week. So I believe it was the October 10th that came out here. Or maybe it was later. Whatever the case may be. It was definitely like, I believe, like I was already all out at once in the UK, I believe. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, there's plenty of room for a season 2, but at the time of recording, it's like I said, it's the 19th. I'm not getting this a couple days later than it's aired here in the US, but there's been no word on whether there'll be a season 2 or not. But there's plenty of room. Like I said, I just don't know where this story plays out in comparison. Like I said, I read some of those changes and differences between the book and the TV show, but like I didn't take a deep dive, so there might be like significant changes where like we're completely straight away from the book, or we're still on par with the book, like plot wise, maybe not characterization wise in a lot of ways. But either way, I'd love a season 2. I hope we do get one, because I'd love a proper conclusion to the story, because it's like, will she get away with it when she literally has Morena breathing down her neck? You ended up having to kill your love interest. You didn't want to be a monster, but you killed AJ. Your whole thing was, hey, I killed bullies. 1, 2, and 3 were bullies. Your 4th victim wasn't one. He was just the guy that you were in love with that would have exposed you. So there's a lot of threads to pull, and I would love to see a season 2. Fingers crossed, hoping we get one. So I have to check up on this later to see whether there are any developments on that front. So, but for now, this is where I'll kind of leave off. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.